we possibly can. But we did also want to let you know that the meeting will be recorded. Last but not least, Margaret, if you could put David's cell phone number. Everyone, we have a team member, David, who is here with us. If anyone is struggling with technology, maybe something isn't working the way you are expecting it to, we invite you to, Margaret's going to put that cell phone number here, or David, if you want to pop it into the chat box. Everyone, again, if you are struggling at all, you are welcome to give David a phone number. If you're not familiar, everyone, 442 is a local number, just a different, newer area code. So we do have some tech support there if you are looking for that. All right, so here's my next question for you, everyone. We're going to test out that chat box here one more time. I'd love to hear from you tonight, everyone. If you can share in the chat box. We're curious about, let me just jump forward here. What brought you to the session tonight? Or maybe what are some of your hopes or expectations for this conversation that we're going to have? So again, everyone, we'd love for you to share in the chat box right now, what brought you to the session this evening? Or maybe just share with us a little bit about what are some of your hopes or your expectations for this conversation to come. And I'll just give you a moment, everyone, give you a chance to answer. Just to give you a sense, everyone, as some of those responses are coming in, a couple of key areas that we're going to focus on tonight. We're going to sort of dig into what's your background or your understanding related to civilian oversight, sort of how it's used, why it's used. We're curious to hear about where you get some of your information related to the Carlsbad Police Department. We're going to spend some time talking about what's the value or what are some of the needs related to integrating civilian oversight into Carlsbad Police Department, as well as just also trying to get a sense of what's the appetite or what's the interest in incorporating, again, civilian oversight. And then again, sort of digging into just a bit of how come, where's that coming from? So we've got lots of great comments here coming in. People are talking about wanting to really seeing value for civilian oversight and wanting to see it integrated. People are coming to wanting to contribute to ensuring racial equity is a part of the conversation, just to better understand civilian oversight. Lots of people saying just want to learn more about it. Some people with some specific questions related to crime in Carlsbad, how many patrol officers there are. Some people also expressing wanting to show their support for the Carlsbad Police Department and the work that is being done. So thank you, everyone, for sharing some of those things. I believe that we will have an opportunity to touch on many of those topics. All right, so let us carry on, everyone. Let me give you, everyone, just a quick overview of what's got us to here, everyone. Like, where has this conversation originated and sort of what is driving some of this? So a little bit of background for all of you. We know very much that law enforcement has been very much a topic of national conversation, and we've really sort of raised the awareness and importance of having this conversation in our communities. Last year, City Council discussed many issues related to police policies. One of those that came up was related to civilian oversight. Since then, members of City Council, as well as the police department, have heard feedback from lots of different organized groups about their experiences and perspectives about local law enforcement and the importance or value of civilian oversight. And we also know that there are many different perspectives out there. And so tonight is very much about really understanding what are all those different perspectives, and what is important that you would like your city council and council members to be considering as they move forward in this conversation. So we're going to, I'm going to check in for a moment. I see a couple of people raising hands. Just give me a couple of moments, everyone. I promise I am not ignoring some of those people that are raising hands. Hannah, I see you. I will make sure that I come check in a couple of minutes. Let me just check in on a few more questions, and then Hannah, something would be really helpful for me while I'm doing this. If you can just write a question or comment, just give me a sense of what you need, and then I'll make sure that I come check in with you here. So everyone, a couple of questions that I have for you just to get us going. Margaret, could we bring up that our next poll question? Everyone, we're curious to learn just a little bit more about how you get your information, or how do you get your knowledge related to police or policing services? So just curious to learn a little bit more about, where do you get your information related to police or policing services? And Hannah, I see your question on language. Do you mind just holding it just for a couple of moments, and then I will make sure I come to you. All right, so we've got lots of people answering the poll here, everyone. Please share in the chat box, everyone, if you've got extra detail that you'd like to give with us about where you get your information. Feel free to put it in the chat so that we all have a chance to see that information, and I'll make sure that I share some things back out. People are sharing, they've got some research looking at scholarly articles. Some people are saying, I get my information from all of these sources from above. Some people are saying, I get it from social media, but as well as other places. And a couple of people who have some personal experiences, whether they're volunteering for an organization. All right, yeah, lots of people sharing sort of where they get that. It looks like people have answered questions in the poll. So let me pause there for a moment. Margaret, let's end that poll and let's share back with everyone where we've come from. So it looks like lots of people are getting their information from local news, some people from social media, and then also we've got some friends and family and community groups, as well as the lists of what people have shared in the chat. Excellent. Thanks everyone for sharing that. Hannah, go ahead, ask me your question about language. I'll do my best to see if I can answer it.
Hi everyone, it's so nice to be here. My name is Hannah. I just moved to the city of Carlsbad with my husband from New York City, and it's a beautiful city. We're very excited to start this new chapter of our lives here. And I'm really looking to get involved in the local community. So I'd mentioned up in the chat, I'm definitely a little concerned, having family members of color coming from New York, which was very diverse, wanting to come to a place that's safe for everybody that I love is very important to me. And I was just curious, I think, and I'm saying this with love, and I'm sure there are a lot of different views here, and I'm so grateful for conversations like this where we can come together and unite, because I think what we all want is just health and safety for our families and ourselves. But something that I would just like to bring up, as I noticed on the website about this meeting, as well as thank you for welcoming me. Thank you, Kirolos. I hope I'm saying your name right. On the website, on the presentation, and some of the language that you're using, I think saying things like, on the website it said to discuss incidents throughout the nation. You had said, there are incidents with law enforcement. And I think that it's really important to just name the problem explicitly, which is that there is an issue of police brutality against Black people and people of color in this country. And I think only when we name something and we use the explicit language can we heal it and we solve it. So I would ask, I would just call for calling things what they are, because I think that is the most respectful to the communities that are victims of that. And I do feel like it helps with healing. So I just wanted to add that in.
Thanks, Hannah. Thank you for that. And everyone, we're going to do, James, I definitely see your hand coming up. We're going to sort of keep doing a little bit of weaving. Everyone, I just want to frame it this way. Hannah, excellent, excellent feedback. These are absolutely some of the things that we're going to be talking about over the course of today when we start thinking about like, what's important when we're thinking about this conversation, or if the city of Carlsbad is going to consider incorporating civilian oversight, what are all the things that we need to have on the table and be talking about to do this in a really thoughtful and meaningful way. I'm going to check in on a couple more questions. James, I promise I have not forgotten. I'm just going to do a couple more things and then we'll make sure that we've got time. I have a couple more questions here for you, everyone. I would love for you to share. Margaret, can we bring up that next poll question, please? Curious to hear, everyone, another question for you. How would you describe your overall level of trust that the Carlsbad Police Department is serving the community well? So again, right now, based on what you know, what you've experienced so far, curious to tell us about how would you describe your overall level of trust that the Carlsbad Police Department is serving the community well? And everyone, I'm going to give you a chance to respond here in the poll. Certainly, if you've got extra comments or thoughts on this, everyone, feel free to keep adding some comments here in the chat box. And then I do promise we will get into some small group discussion where we can actually really dive in with others. Just a couple more things to get us started. Just waiting another moment or so, everyone. I see just a couple, making sure we didn't have anybody else who hadn't responded to the poll that was interested. So we'll just wait another 20 seconds. Last call for anyone else. Okay. So Margaret, let's go ahead and end that poll and let's bring back those results for everyone. All right, so we've got, again, everyone have a combination of experiences here. We've got some people who are feeling a very low overall level of trust, some people who are in the middle, and then we've got some people who are feeling have a high or a very high level of trust. So again, thank you everyone for sharing back those responses. So here's my question, everyone, and then James, I'm going to come to you here in a moment. Everyone, I would like to get you to answer this question for me, everyone. Again, I'd love for you to share some of your responses in the chat. Let me just bring it up here. Give me a moment while I do a little bit of driving. Curious if you could share with us, everyone, again, from what you know right now, what you've experienced so far, what is civilian oversight? If you were to describe it in your own words, what's civilian oversight? And from what you understand, what's the purpose that it serves? I'm going to share with you just a little bit more here in a couple of moments about what the city of Carlsbad has already looked into, but based on what you know right now and what you've experienced so far, curious about your understanding of what civilian oversight and what purpose does it serve? I'll just give you a couple of minutes to get some of that conversation happening here in the chat box. All right, so we've got some people who are starting to respond here, everyone. People talking about understanding it as citizen input into the police department. It's about accountability. Some people sharing that for them, it's about transparency, being able to have public input on what's working in the police department and what's not working. Again, some more comments about accountability to the community, an agenda to curtail policing and to defund police is somebody's understanding. Also people talking about that there is no sort of one way of doing this, that there's a number of different ways to go about doing this. Excellent, everyone. That is really helpful. Feel free, everyone, to keep coming in. Linda, I did see your comment in the chat, and I will come back to you here in a couple of moments. Just before we get there, though, everyone, shortly I want to give us a chance to dive into some discussion. But James, you've been patiently waiting, so just feel free to jump in here, James.
Yes, thank you. Can you hear me okay?
We sure can.
I just wanted to join in welcoming Hannah to Carlsbad. Hannah, I moved here from New York, but that was 45 years ago. And I have lived in Carlsbad long enough to know that there is no evidence of a recurring pattern of racial insensitivity or excessive use of force on the part of the Carlsbad police officers. Thank you.
Thanks, James. And everyone, I just really want to reaffirm here and just give me 1 second, Hannah. I just really want to reaffirm here, everyone, that I am 100% certain that every person who comes to this conversation is going to have a different experience. And they're going to have, some people have had one experience and some people have had an entirely different experience. And really tonight is all about that, is about understanding what are those different experiences. And so I suspect, Hannah, you started us off here. You come from one experience from the people who live in your family, and James also has another experience. Everyone, this is exactly what we are looking for tonight, is to really understand what are all of those different experiences out there. Let me give a teeny tiny bit more information, everyone. Linda, I think you had maybe wanted to share something, and then everyone, I'm going to stop talking. And we're going to jump into some small groups where we can actually get into a bit more of a discussion, everyone. So let me give you a teeny tiny little bit more here. And then I promise I'm going to turn it over. I'm going to turn it over to all of you. So a little bit of background. Again, everyone, we had shared that this topic had been raised at City Council, and City Council asked staff members to go and do some research, go and do some looking at what's out there. What have other municipalities or other organizations been doing related to civilian oversight? And they shared back with City Council some of the findings. Now, everyone, if you're interested, I'm going to give a very high level overview of all of their findings. You can always go and watch the recording of a much longer presentation. So please know that I am giving you the high level highlights, and know that there is more than that. So a couple of things we want you to know about. Some of the very common reasons that organizations bring in civilian oversight, that there has potentially been incidences or patterns of misconduct, and that was a reason why it was brought in. There was either large calls for reform or a real lack in public trust. Another major reason why this civilian oversight gets brought forward is a desire to foster really productive public dialogue. We know from the research and from some of the articles that are out there that a community with confidence and sort of believe and trust in their police department is a much safer community. And so these are often some of the reasons why civilian oversight might be brought in. Couple of other things we thought you might be interested in knowing about. I think Kirolos had referenced this a little bit in the chat. Everyone, you may have seen it come across. There's a lot of different ways to do civilian oversight. There isn't just sort of one way. It often falls into one of a couple of buckets. Sometimes there can be a commission that has really broad powers. There often also can be independent investigative agencies that look into different situations or different incidences. There also can be advisory panels where there is input or guidance given into the police. And then more often than not, everyone, anytime civilian oversight comes in, it's often a combination of these of these different buckets that we've introduced here. Last but not least, everyone, we did also want to share, I referenced at the beginning some common reasons why we bring in civilian oversight, and it's often because of these purposes or results that we would be looking for. So again, looking to build trust, creating a public forum or opportunity to talk about issues or situations, to deterring misconduct, increasing transparency. Lots of you had already talked about improving accountability. So a lot of different reasons or purposes of what civilian oversight can really bring value. So again, everyone, this is just a bit of a surface level, what has already been looked at and what's already been researched. And we really want to pair that together with the information that you're going to be sharing with us tonight. So everyone, we're going to dive into some small groups here in a moment. Just before we go there, James, I do see your hand up. Linda, you had messaged me in the chat, and I know you said you had wanted to share something. Linda, can I turn it over to you for a quick moment?
Thank you very much. I have an unusual perspective that I wanted to share with the group. I volunteer for an organization that works very closely with first responders. And so often when you come in contact with the police, it's usually, something very personal, something that's happening to you or that you need help with. I've seen it from the idea of being an observer, if you will. I'm not involved in it. I'm there to help the families that have been affected by whatever crime that has happened. And I can tell you that Carlsbad Police Department, the police are very compassionate. They're very caring. I'm so impressed with them as a volunteer, just as somebody that's not involved, that is just seeing it from a in my view, very objective, because I'm not involved in whatever the environment is that's going on. As a resident, I would really like to see money, because this oversight committee is going to cost money. We're going to have to pay for it. And I'd rather use that money to help businesses and other people that have been affected by our virus and are just barely surviving. So I just wanted to say that, just because I have an unusual perspective, because I'm not involved, when I come in contact with the police. So I just wanted to share that. Thank you for letting me share.
Thanks, Linda. All right, everyone. So here's what we're going to do. You've heard a little bit from a couple of people on the call, but now I'd actually like to give you a chance to sort of really actually get into the discussion in a much deeper way than we've had an opportunity to. Here's what's going to happen in order to facilitate that, everyone. We're going to move into some small breakout room discussion, but I do want you to know, everyone, that at the end of that small breakout room discussion, we're going to come back together as a large group. You're going to have the opportunity to hear what was being said in some of those small groups, as well as we'll create a bit of an opportunity if there are some specific questions or some specific comments that maybe people wanted to offer back as reflections at the end. So that was lots of words to say this. We're going to move into some smaller group discussion. Then we're going to come back and share back out some of the major themes that were heard. And then we'll make sure that we have an opportunity if people had some specific questions. James, I still do see your hand up. Don't worry, I haven't forgotten. Just trying to make sure that we keep some flow. So just give me one more second, James. So everyone, last thing I need to tell you about before we move is that we're going to move into these small breakout groups. Every once in a while, there's a bit of bouncing around. Technology takes a couple of minutes. If for some reason you don't want to go into the small breakout room, no problem. You're welcome to just hang out with us and take a little bit of a break here in the large group, and then you can reconvene with us again afterwards. So just know that there can be a little bit of jostling. So just before I give you the questions, Jane, what was the perspective you wanted to share?
Yes, thank you. I just wanted to respond briefly. You put up a slide about many of the reasons which are frequently cited for developing civilian police oversight. And I think it's important to know that the city staff addressed this in their report to the City Council last October. And this is a direct quote from that report from the city staff, in which they said there is limited data on the effectiveness of police oversight agencies. I think we all need to keep that in mind.
Thanks, James, for that perspective. All right, everyone. So we've got, we're going to move into some discussion here, everyone. Let me show you the questions, everyone, that we are going to be talking about when we land. Now, everyone, when you land in those groups, you will be greeted by one of our city team members. So they will be there to help guide you through the discussion, as well as record lots of notes that comes out. Two big questions we'd love to ask you about before you when you land in those breakout groups. We're curious about if you see a need for civilian oversight, what's driving that need? What might be some of the problems or issues or concerns that we could address? Conversely, if you don't see the need for civilian oversight, we're also curious to hear about, from your perspective, how come it isn't needed at this time? We also want you to think about what might be some of the potential unintended consequences that we need to think about before we, or when it comes to civilian oversight. So this is an opportunity to think about, where am I at? Where do I see the value or the need? And then sort of dive into the discussion. Now, here's the last thing that I'm going to do, just to kind of give you a sense of where you're at right now. Margaret, could we bring up that last poll before we go into those breakout groups? Everyone, we're curious again on what you know right now, knowing that there's probably more to discuss and think about. We're curious, based on your own experience, what's your level of need, or what do you see as the level of need for integrating civilian oversight? Again, right now, knowing what you know and what you've experienced, what's the level of need? Is it something that's not very valuable and not needed? Maybe some limited value? Somewhat valuable, it's valuable, or it's really valuable and really need it. So again, we're going to dive into this when we go into those groups, but did want to just do a quick check-in with everyone, knowing where you're at right now. What's the value? What's the need right now for integrating civilian oversight? All right, and we got lots of great comments still coming in the chat box here, everyone. Thank you for sharing those resources and sharing those perspectives. All right, Margaret, it looks like we've got most people who've responded. So let's go ahead and end that poll. Let's share those results back with everyone. So we've got, again, everyone, quite a combination. We've got some people who are seeing us not very valuable and not needed. And then across the board, where we've got other people who are saying this is very valuable and very needed. So again, welcoming all of those perspectives. So everyone, we're going to use this as our launch point. We are going to dive into some of those, and we can stop sharing those results, Margaret. We're going to dive into that discussion again when you land in those breakout groups. Your facilitators there, everyone, will have the questions. So don't worry about remembering those questions. Those of you that I can see who've got your cameras on, just give me a thumbs up that you are ready to land into breakout groups. All right, it looks like we've got quite a few people who are ready to go. All right, Margaret, let's go ahead and open those breakout groups up. Everyone know it might take a few minutes to get to where you need to go. All right, everyone, welcome back. Just waiting a moment while people are reorientating themselves and landing back in the large group here. So thank you everyone for coming back. We were going to end discussion and then I had done a little tour around the virtual room and everyone was still very actively engaged. And so we didn't want to end it too soon, everyone. So thank you for coming back. So here's what's going to happen, everyone, to take us to the end of our time together. We're going to give our small group facilitators a chance to give highlights from each one of the discussions, because I had a chance to sort of peek into each conversation and each were just a little different. So we're going to hear some highlights. We're also going to create just a couple of minutes for if you have any specific, I'll call them information-based questions. We've got some people here who can support that. And then we will finish at the end, everyone, with some final reflections or general comments. And everyone, you'll have the opportunity to either share that in the chat box or you can share it verbally with the large group. So know that that's coming. Everyone, a couple of you messaged me saying, hey, Kim, there's a few things I wanted to share. So yeah, we will make sure that we make time for that. To that end, all of my facilitators who are going to do your report back, my request is that you make it sort of a minute and a half or less. Everyone, I want to make sure we give airtime to everyone and I don't want to run out of time. So let me start off first with Blake, if you would mind turning on your camera and if you can share back with us again some of the highlights of what came out of your discussion.
Sure. Our group had a great conversation and we spent the bulk of it with people discussing whether or not this type of committee could be politicized in any way and how things like that could influence the direction of the city, or if they could possibly influence the direction of the city, or if that was even an option. We had some very strong people thinking that it wasn't possible to make it a political issue. And then there were some conversations on the other side thinking that it could be a tool to lead the city down a certain path. Another important thing that we talked about was the kind of people that would be serving on a committee like this. Would they get an education first? Would they be experts already coming in, or would they just be regular community members that just wanted to join? And how would their knowledge of the police force and how things work affect their job? So people were interested in how that would be defined, how the application process and requirements would be. And then those were the two biggest things that we discussed. We did have just a lot of people, or a few of our people just thought that there could be no bad parts of a committee like this, because it's just going to influence a better relationship with the police department and the community. So those were the biggest things that came out of our discussion.
Thanks, Blake, for that overview. Let me come to Craddock next. Craddock, can you give us some highlights, again, just highlights from your group's conversation?
Yes, we had quite a diversity of opinion in our group. We talked about the level of oversight that already exists, but however, that could be balanced by a civilian committee. We had a couple very specific concerns regarding unconscious bias and bringing an awareness and acknowledgement of unconscious bias to the police department, so that we can balance being able to trust and empower the police with the very real reckoning that is happening in our society around that issue. There was also another very specific issue regarding disabled persons and the ability for disabled persons to have accountability and learn and to have the opportunity for an oversight committee to address that specific concern. There was a lot of conversation around community and the engagement of the community and how critical that is to this process, and whether or not an oversight committee fundamentally, who does it serve? It serves Is it that the oversight comes from the council, the city manager, the police chief, or is it something that the community committee could oversee? And we talked also about kind of how critical it is for the selection process and the criteria to be very clear, so that we can ensure that such a committee can actually be effective.
Thanks, Craddock. Thank you for giving us that overview. Nikki, I believe you were also in a different group. Nikki from the city of Carlsbad, go ahead, over to you.
Yes, I think our group had really personalized experiences to share. I think like across the board, everyone had some kind of personal experience with the Carlsbad Police Department. And at the end of the day, while there wasn't necessarily consensus on even the need for a civilian oversight committee, I think that they all agreed that there's this idea of collaboration, of connection, whatever that connection looks like. What does it look like to increase the communication between the Carlsbad Police Department, the community members, and just, have communication, conversation, this idea of just the safe place to speak. We also just talked about the costs that come into it, also just not doing it for the sake of doing it. Like there is the risk of creating a quote unquote weak or disorganized civilian oversight that it's not even a solution at the end of the day. So there would have to be some really intentional creation into it if that was the route that we were going down. But at the end of the day, I think we all agreed that it's something collaborative where it keeps both the community and our police officers safe.
Thanks,
so team, I hope I captured that correctly for us.
Thanks, Nikki. Yes, and I appreciate that I'm putting all of you a bit on the spot, saying, give us the highlights, really appreciating everyone that there are many nuances, many intricacies to what everybody had shared. So please know that our team members were tasked to record as much as you possibly can so that we can share back with our city council all of those details and nuances. I believe I have one more group. Sheila, I think that you were also in a group. Sheila, I'm wondering if you can again give us an overview.
Yes, I sure can. Hold on. I was actually trying to type it up as you were talking. So our group had really good conversations on whether oversight is necessary. Those in favor stated that it could be a mechanism to enhance the relationship between the community and the police department. Those saying that they had feelings that maybe the data does not support the need, but they, if they saw the data, they could possibly support the need for some sort of oversight, and just wanted to make sure that it's not just a trend that's being, started right now. Key themes were the importance of obviously enhancing relationships between the community and the police department. They said that the committee could possibly maybe oversee training tools and encourage inclusive hiring practices, such as people of color and more women on the police force. Overall, there wasn't a consensus on the need for any type of oversight. However, it was a good discussion and there were folks on both sides of the issue. Thanks,
Sheila.
You're welcome.
All right, everyone. So that gives you a sense of what was happening in all of the conversations. Want to just share with you just a little bit more before we go into just a bit of some last questions and final reflections, everyone. Know that all of this input and feedback that's coming will be compiled together. The city often produces reports afterwards that again shows the highlights of everything that came out, as well as the key themes, or where were there points of tension and what were some of the comments and commentary that came back out. So this is the second of 4 meetings, everyone, again, as well as an online survey, and all of that information will be compiled together. So Mickey, can I invite you to come back on screen? Mickey's here, everyone. Mickey, can you tell us again your official title to make sure I don't get it not correct?
Sure. Hello, everyone. My name is Mickey Williams, and I'm the Assistant Chief for the Carlsbad PD.
Excellent. So Mickey, there was a couple of questions that came in from some of our facilitators, some questions at the tables that I want, or virtual tables that I was curious maybe if you could tell us a bit about. Again, everyone, we're going to just do a couple of minutes here. If you have any specific, I call them information type questions, like maybe some detail that maybe you're curious about. So Mickey, 2 questions. Let me just read you the first one first. Mickey, some people were curious about how many police officers does the Carlsbad Police Force currently have?
So we currently have 129 authorized police officers. We have 128 of those positions filled. As people retire or move on to either a different profession or a different department, our numbers will fluctuate. But we've been able to stay really close to full staffed for at least the last couple of years. And right now we're at 129, and we expect this week to give a conditional job offer to a lateral police officer that's looking to come here. So that will get us back up to 129.
Thanks, Mickey. I have one other question for you, Mickey, again, related to current police officers. People were curious, what could you tell us about the diversity of the current police force? What could you tell us about that?
Sure. So there was recently an article in the Union Tribune that addressed the diversity of departments within San Diego County. And the study showed that we very fairly represent our community with our force. But I think the important thing is there's studies that have shown that diversity within a police department increases the ability to change. It increases the willingness to entertain different thoughts. And so one of the things that we constantly are seeking is, one, we have to hire the best people. People expect a very high level of performance by police officers, and there's little room for error. So we need to hire the best. But at the same time, we also have to constantly seek to diversify our ranks, because it is the diversity of our department that allows us to see things from different perspectives and to more readily be willing to change and adapt.
Thanks, Mickey. Now, Hannah, I see you had asked a question about demographics. I think that was similar to where Mickey was going. So I'm not ignoring your question. I just thought that they might be grouped together. Maybe just a quick question, Mickey, and then I'm going to come to maybe just a bigger one for you to speak around. Kurt was curious, how many of the police officers live in Carlsbad? So maybe live in Carlsbad and work in Carlsbad.
Well, I don't have the exact numbers on that. Based on my approximate, I would say maybe about 20 to 40% live in the city and the rest do not. Obviously, the cost of living, especially for new officers, is one major hurdle. And then there's also other factors such as, where their families originally come from, or maybe they're where their spouse works, so that sort of thing that might lead an officer to work or live in a different city. But I'm not going to say guessing, because I do have some information, but I don't have the numbers directly in front of me. But I would approximate between 20 to 40% live in the city.
Excellent. Thanks for that. Mickey, I have one other question for you. Kirolo says, put this in the chat. I'm going to read it out, Mickey, but because there's a bit of content in there, I invite you to go sort of read and listen here all at the same time. His question is related to, does the police force analyze the use of force incidences and proportionally with respect to the demographics of Carlsbad? So I think it's looking at what happens and where is it happening to, I think is the question that he's looking. So what can you tell us about that?
Sure, that's a good question. So we in August did a 3-year report to City Council regarding use of force and arrest data and detention data for psychiatric holds, because the arrests and the psychiatric holds are generally where the use of force activity will occur. And so we compared those different incidents over the 3 years based on, we looked at, one of the aspects we looked at was race, and in proportion to our overall community. And then another layer that we'll look at is SANDAG for San Diego County provides data on the regional offenders for different crimes. And so you can also, that's another valuable tool to look at as far as looking at who's getting arrested, and then you can compare that to the use of force. So yes, we do look at that information.
Thanks, Mickey, for that answer. All right, everyone. I'm not seeing any immediate questions come in, but I did promise an opportunity to give one final reflection, everyone, as we're coming close to the end of our time together. Let me share with you the question. Everyone, you have the opportunity to either respond to this in the chat. You also have the opportunity to, if you can sort of do a raise hand for me, and if there are people who wanted to share verbally, I will do that as well. So maybe the frame that we thought we'd put this last reflection question in, if the city of Carlsbad were to move forward with civilian oversight, what would need to be considered to ensure this is done in a meaningful and informed way? Everyone, this is essentially a mouthful to say, if this is going to go forward, what are the things that your city council members or Carlsbad Police Department should be thinking about in order to ensure that this is done in a really thoughtful way? So I'll just give you, I'm going to leave that screen up here for a moment, everyone, just so that you have the opportunity to give it a think. I'm seeing a couple of hands coming up, so please know that I see them. I'm just going to give everyone a moment just to think this through. Again, everyone, you have the opportunity to respond in the chat. You also have the opportunity to share here, everyone. Okay. So let me, I'm going to stop my screen sharing here. Kyrillos, I think I had promised you earlier. So yes, let's jump in here. Go ahead.
Hi, thank you for the opportunity, and thank you for everyone who is attending tonight. I just wanted to say that the overall purpose, one, I'm the co-founder of the Carlsbad Equality Coalition, and we've been meeting with the department since June to learn about the department, their practices, and things like that. And I think one of the main purposes of a civilian oversight board really and truly is to connect the needs of the entire community, not just the, I think people have concerns here that the 27% people of color is what a civilian oversight board would represent. No, the civilian oversight board would represent all of Carlsbad, including any safety concerns. But what a civilian oversight board does is provide a streamline of communication directly with leadership of a department in order to provide input from the perspective of the police. And if you look at any sort of professional agency, whether it's the American Medical Association or the Bar Association or what have you, they always include groups of civilians who are not related to that practice to provide input into those practices. Why? Not because they're the ones who are doing the job, but because that input helps reach best practices. Carlsbad Police Department is rolling out a de-escalation policy over the course of the next year and a disengagement policy that is, we as a coalition, we're continuing to look at it, but it's very much in line with the things that we've been talking about for a decade. And they did that of their own volition. They didn't do it when they met with us or when they met with activists. They did it because it was the best practice. And we think that a community oversight board would have helped us reach their goal years ago, as opposed to now. And as a result, keep the community safer. With regards to any investigative functions of an oversight board, again, that process needs to be collaborative and it needs to work with police officers to see what's fair to them, but also have independence to bring up the community's concerns as well. And so an oversight board is not a dictatorial board that tells officers what they have to do and where they need to do it. What it is an opportunity to have the community direct input into those practices and help us reach the best results for everyone, officers and the community. And that's the point that I wanted to make tonight.
Thanks so much for those reflections. Everyone, lots of great comments coming in the chat. James, let me check in with you, and then Council Member, I'm going to come back to you if you had any closing remarks that you wanted to offer. James, coming over to you.
Right, thank you. Kim, in setting this up, you were talking about what should the council be thinking about as it considers whether or not to go forward with an independent oversight committee. And I would suggest, number one, they should be thinking about the ongoing costs of this. This would be an ongoing committee. City staff would no doubt have to attend to the committee. So this is a cost item. To my knowledge, no one has said anything about what this might cost as we go forward. Number two, I think the council needs to take into account, or at least consider, whether there would be an effect on police officer morale if this were instituted. And finally, they need to consider what the effect would be on response times in Carlsbad. Thank you very much.
Thanks, James, for sharing that. Again, everyone, lots of great comments that are coming in here. Council Member Bat Patel, please jump in, take us to close.
Sure, of course. Well, first off, I want to thank everyone for taking your Monday evening and spending it with us. I know that you could be anywhere tonight and you chose to spend it here with us to have this conversation. So thank you for being here and providing your feedback. I know we're going to take this and make sure we consider it as we move forward. And I, again, look forward to continuing this conversation with all of you. And I'm glad that we had a diverse variety of opinions presented today. So thank you again for being here.
All right, everyone. So again, to bring us to close, feel free to keep any last messages coming here in the chat box, everyone. We encourage you, if you've got more to say, please join us on our online survey. Invite others, friends, families, coworkers, other people that you know care about this. Invite them to go and share their perspectives as well. And to that end, everyone, thank you very much for coming out this evening. Again, we very much appreciate it. Everyone stay well, look after yourselves and your family, and good night to all of you.